Hey, welcome to this month's Wake Up West Coast. My name is Jody Ozarski, at least that's what this card says. And I have the privilege of being on the team at the West Coast Chamber. And whether you're joining us here in person or online, so glad that you've chosen to start your day with us here today. This morning we have a couple of great sponsors with us that allow us to do the work that we do. First off, we have our morning mingle sponsor, Harley Batches from the Holland Board of Public Works. Hopefully you saw her light bulbs out there and got to see Harley. Oh, there's Harley. If you didn't get a chance to stop and chat with her on the way in, make sure you do that on the way out. Harley and the team at the BPW are doing incredibly important work there. We also have a program sponsor this morning, Smith Hoy Rice and Rogie. Did I say that right? Hoy, shoot. Smith Hoy Rice and Rogie is our program sponsor this morning, and I'm joined by Olivia, the newly married Olivia. So I'm not sure if I have your new last name, old last name, or if it's staying put. Okay, so Olivia is joining me here this morning. So Olivia, Smith Hoy has just such a great reputation here in our community. Tell us a little bit about what makes your firm so special.
Yeah, thank you, Jody. Again, good morning. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to start with a little personal thing. I've been with the firm about a year now, and I had a whole career before this where just based on it, I was introduced to and had access to a lot of law firms, and I was being very particular about where I wanted to go. And when I met with the folks at Smith Hoy, it clicked instantly. I said, oh, they were smart, they were caring, they were kind, they kind of had that full package I was looking for. And then thank God when I got there, it lived up to the hype. Yeah. But so as far as the firm, I mean, we have about 70 attorneys plus paralegals and staff across the state. We have Grand Rapids, Muskegon, Ann Arbor, and then Holland. But what makes the Holland firm so special is that we are the only office that specializes, really. So we are all business and real estate. This is kind of the brain trust for the firm of all things business. If you're raising funds, if you're selling, if you're buying, real estate issues, easements. So people are coming to us in the firm to answer those types of questions, and we sit right here in this community. And then we also have a great kind of securities and nonprofit part of our practice, which being in Ottawa County, that's kind of the best place in the country to do that. Sure. So, yeah, we're kind of just like special ops within in the whole firm, but specifically for business.
Love that. I have a new goal. I'd love to be a part of a group that somebody called a brain trust. It's never something I've been accused of so far.
Look at you there.
I love that. So, Olivia, you and I got to know each other a little bit when you were interviewing to be a part of our leadership program, and you're in this year's cohort. It seems this has been a priority for Smith Hoy, that we regularly have someone from your firm a part of the program. So tell me, why is that?
Yeah.
And what have you found that you've enjoyed so far in the program?
Well, again, kind of going back to that ethos of Smith Hoy, we really pride ourselves on being a part of the community, and I was lucky enough to just be, I think, number 7 in a row of going through the cohort. And it really is the best way, if you have any interest in making deeper connections in the community, understanding the community more, being able to relate to all sorts of different groups within the community, it really is the best and probably quickest way to make sure that happens. I mean, we're not even halfway through. I've lived in West Michigan for 15 years. In the past 6 months, I have more facts and more resources than I've ever had before. And we're not even done yet. Yeah. So it's great.
Love that. So glad that was just recorded. You might see that
trademark.
You might see that clip again. That's awesome. Olivia, thank you for being invested in this community, both personally and as a firm. We at the Chamber are so grateful for the partnership. Will you all join me in thanking Olivia and the team at Smith Hoy?
Thank you, Jody.
So as always, we want to make sure that we give you time to connect with the people that you are sitting near this morning. So we're going to take some time for some networking at your table. So here's what I'm going to let you do. Take a moment to introduce yourself, your name, your company, and an exciting project that you're working on or that you're looking forward to here in 2025. So with that, go ahead and chat with the folks around you. Here we go. And we're back. So it is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Abby Johnston from AG Collaborative. I've been a huge fan of Abby and Greg and the team at AG for a long time, and this is a conversation we've been having for a while now, over a year, actually, to get Abby in and share with you all today, because we know the incredible value and wisdom that she has to share with each of you. And so it is absolutely my pleasure to introduce Abby Johnston. Abby, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Jody. Jody, can I just bring you around and have you introduce me to everyone? Like everyone that I meet. Is my mic actually on, y'all? You know what, guys? I know where it is. Let's get a handheld. We thought we had it all worked out. This is what happens when you wear outfits like this that have fake pockets. Dudes don't understand what this is like, but as a female, you know what it's like, where you end up and you're like, I don't have anything to hook this to. All right. So I am Abby Johnston, as stated here, and the irony actually of being in this space today is that lots of people graduate college and then move off campus. But apparently I didn't get that memo. I went to Hope College, and while I went to Hope College, thank you, the one person, I went to Hope College and lived off campus, and then when I graduated, I actually moved onto campus and just lived right over there in this building. So I used to do my laundry just right straight over there. So it's kind of crazy that over a decade and a half later, I'm in this building, standing up in front of his room, having this conversation. Like, what an incredible journey. And the other thing that I really want to name is that in this room, there are some key humans that walked this journey with me. And I am so thankful for the people that believed in me, quite frankly, before they had any business to do that. They believed in me at the very beginning. My professor for this thing, public speaking, I don't know if he wants me to name this or not, but Rob is in the room, who helped me learn how to do this thing. We didn't actually talk about the mic stuff, but we'll figure that out later. So yeah, it is an honor. The one other thing that I wanted to name, because it was really sweet, my daughter, who is 6, was registered this morning to come with my husband. And when I was like, hey, honey, you're going to get to come hear Mama speak. She's like, am I going to be late for school? So props to Holland Public Schools for, bringing a solid education that she did not want to meet, but I think she is zooming in, so she gets to see it at least from there. So to begin this morning, I want to begin by sharing a story with you all. And this story is about a deer. If you are a deer hunter, this is not about hunting. So I'm guessing someone in this room is a hunter, and we're just gonna not think about killing this poor little deer. So this deer is actually a deer that lived way, way out in the wilderness. And it would do what deers do every day. It would travel around, hanging out, looking for food, trying to find some soft places to lay its head and chill out. And there was one day in particular, as this deer was doing what it does, that it came upon this scent, this smell that it had never smelled before. It was the most enchanting, magical scent that it had ever smelled. And this deer, for whatever reason, felt compelled to find the source of this scent. And so it spent the rest of its life searching for this source. Like this deer, traversed the crazy rivers, it went along cliffs' edges, it went well into the woods, and never found it. And it got to the end of this deer's life, and it was weary and frustrated and ready to be done. And as this deer was sort of sinking to the ground in its final breath, its antler pierced its side. And from its side came the most amazing, magical scent it had ever smelled. And so it is that we find ourselves looking for the thing, searching for the thing that we actually already have. Looking for the thing outside of ourselves that is actually already here. And this is very true for us within the leadership space. So often in this space of leadership, we're looking outside of ourselves, A, to even find out, am I actually a leader? Am I a leader? And then B, if I am I a very good one? We're searching outside of ourselves for these answers to validate whether we are a leader and whether we're very good at it. And what we do is we miss who we already are in this leadership space as we seek to try and become something else. And added to that complexity is the fact that this leadership development space, when you think about leadership, it is a cluttered, noisy, that was the combo of the two. Cluttered, noisy space, right? It is, if you were to go on Amazon this morning and you're like, you know what? I'm gonna start reading books again. I'm gonna be part of the Brain Trust, and I'm gonna read books. And I'm gonna, buy one from Amazon, and you go on, you look for a leadership book, and there's 60,000 plus hits that you're gonna get as far as books on leadership. And they're not all telling you the exact same thing, right? There are a zillion, probably not an exaggeration, a zillion opinions of the right way to lead and who you have to be to lead and the 4 T's and the 5 Z's and the irrefutables. It just goes on and on and on. And so you add this trying to figure out if you're a leader or not to all the noise, and you're like, dang it, I'm just tired. So today, our goal is to really sort of cut through the noise and create some clarity and help you sort of move the needle and become the leader that you crave to be. So how we're gonna do that, first is we're gonna look at this leadership piece. What is leadership? Super common term, we use it all the time, but there isn't actually one single solid definition. So let's start there. If we're gonna get better at something, we need to sort of know what that thing is. The other thing is that from that place, there are these 3 elements that for us to really shift our ability to lead and evolve who we are in the leadership space, these 3 things need to be present. So we're gonna talk about those, and then we're gonna end today with a tool that you can take away and bring with you outside of the room that you can start using right away to help you really become the leader you crave to be. That's the path, that's where we're going. You all seem to really enjoy talking to each other, which is a good thing. So I'm gonna have you talk to each other again. And when it comes to defining leadership, again, I talked about how this is a common word, no common definition. We're gonna have y'all define it. So at your tables, you are going to define what is leadership. So there are the 3 things we're doing. And here's what I want to ask you about with the leadership piece. I want you to think about leadership as a verb. So leadership as a verb, what is the action of leading, okay? Let's Scouts honor, not Google or use AI or do whatever people do on their fancy smartwatches. Just use this. And have someone who's gonna be a scribe. There's pens and notepaper in the middle of your table. And then someone who's gonna be willing to speak out loud about what that definition is, okay? So I will take time and I'll give you 3 minutes to write this. All right, guys. Good news. You can hear me? Good news. We found it. All right. Let's call you back. And I would love to hear what are some of the definitions that y'all came up with out there. So who's someone that was voluntold to be the speaker at their table and share what they came up with? So let's hear. I see that hand. We'll run a mic to you.
Thank you. We had a lot of things that will probably come up, but we landed on a good leader is someone who learns to take a back seat to the team so the team can move forward.
A good leader is someone who learns how to take a back seat so that others can be forward. Great. What else? Add to that.
We said influence is got to be the verb, and it's a leader that leads by example, a servant leader, and communicates well the vision, the direction, so that people will follow.
Mm-hmm. Servant leader, great, who communicates the vision. What else? Yes, I see that hand.
So we're saying that the act of leadership is walking with a team or a community towards something great. And perhaps you're empowering your community, you're guiding your team, and you're growing the people next to you.
Great. Let's add to that.
We said bringing people together, bringing clarity. Bringing people together, bringing clarity to the team, ownership, accountability, influence, and relationships. If you don't have the relationships, it's really hard to build a team. And have some curious communication.
Ooh, curious communication. Nice. Love that. Let's hear one more. Right over here.
All right, we felt that we had a bunch of lists, but the ones that hadn't been mentioned, one was is humble,
Okay.
and is visionary.
Humble and visionary. Okay, so a good leader is humble and visionary. All right, let's actually hear one more because I have locked eyes with you and.
Thanks. We literally went with a list of verbs, and so serve, guide, trust, include, support, elevate, cultivate, and care. And the observation is nobody said wonk, guru, or expert.
Amazing. Thank you. Even in this room, you can see how we all sort of had the one responsibility, and yet lots of different things entered the rooms, lots of different perspectives, lots of different characteristics entered the room as it relates to leadership. And one of the reasons why, when we talk about leadership and we ask people to think about it as the verb, is because often what happens is we start thinking about like all of these characteristics that is like the perfect human, right? Like we just have like these laundry list of like caring but bold and, visionary but knows the now, and like just all of these expectations around like the characteristics of who a leader should be versus like this idea of like what is the action of leading. So it can be really hard at times to get at like what's the thing that we're using all of those characteristics towards. So this is a description that we have used. We actually borrowed this. This is not ours. We didn't write it ourselves. But it's essentially 3 parts. It's a process of social influence. So gentlemen in the back, I think you named that piece. Process of social influence that maximizes the efforts of others towards a specific goal. A process of social influence that maximizes the efforts of others towards a specific goal. Okay? So I'm going to throw it back to you. This time I don't have to find my mic, so I won't give you quite as much time. But I'm going to throw it back to y'all at your tables and give you about 2 minutes to just interact with this. Like, what do you like? What do you maybe not like? What do you think is missing? What would you add? Okay, this is an opportunity to interact and share what this brings up at your tables. So I will use my dumb watch to track time. In about 2 minutes, I'll call you back. All right. All right. All right, I'm gonna get your attention again. As we did last time, I'm gonna wanna hear back what your interactions were with this. We've got some mics. So who can share some of the things that were coming up at your table related to this description? Yes, all right.
Well, I started in our group, and I would say the Lions and Dan Campbell are a perfect example of knowing what that goal is. And I believe the culture of that team reflects what their mission and their goal is. And while, and really what I loved about watching that team this season is they don't talk about themselves. They complement each other. How do you have two running backs that are both, competing for yards and then act like they're best buddies? That is a reflection of culture because their vision and purpose reflects their leader. And so the influence of the leader on that team. And so show me a good team, I'll show you a good leader.
Nice. And I love that the Lions were brought into the room. Thank you very much. I feel like there's a blog there, so think about it. Yeah. But this idea of being able to look at the team that reflects the leadership. Great. What else?
Our table talked a lot about how the definition overall is fantastic and succinct, and where you kind of get different styles of leadership comes from how you achieve the social influence and maximizing effort. So how you might interpret or live out those two parts is where you might find style within leadership.
Great. I'm going to come back to that, and I see that right there.
Just to add to what's kind of already been shared, we noticed that the definition that's up is pretty neutral. So it doesn't actually tell us if the goal is a good one or a worthy one. And so we wanted to add something to that effect that if we're good leaders, we're not just mindlessly chasing things that we could do, but that something that was shared at our table is it should be a common good and not just like a majority good, but something that's truly good for all of us.
Yeah, often honestly, Hitler does get brought up a lot, right? Because it's like, well, to what end? Like, how are we actually applying what kind of goal? And so that comes up, and can it be pro-social? Can it be a common good? Like, what is the goal? And we keep it off because we like the discussion. But yeah, because it shows that there's a way that this can be shifted either positively and or potentially negatively. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Was there someone else who had something to say here? All right. Oh.
We were noticing as a group that there's no time frame listed here, so the leadership can be as long as a month-long project or as short as trying to decide what's for dinner. So we like that aspect of leadership, that the baton can shift from person to person.
Love that. Love that insight. Yeah, the reason why we love this description is because of what's in it and because of also what's not in it. Right? So if we go back to this process of social influence, if we go to the process part, this really highlights the fact that leadership is in fact a process. Like, it's not like done work. Like we don't get to a place and we like check it off the box and we're like, done, I'm all leaderful. This is not how leadership works. It's an ongoing process. And the other piece is this social, like it's this impact that we have on other humans. And the thing that often most of us miss is that we aren't just these like neutral beings floating through space. We are always having an impact. Like, even in this room, as you sit in this space, not even saying a word, you are actually contributing and influencing this space. Like, we are, in fact, always having an influence because of the way that we are designed as humans and our brains as social beings. It's just a constant reality. And to your point at the table over there, Greg will like pull me off stage in a minute if I go off too long on my little soapbox. But this is exactly why I love this description, which is this like social influence. Good golly, that could look like so many things. Like, if we look at leaders throughout history and the way that they led it and their characteristics, right, who they were, you would see like incredibly different characteristics. And this for me is part of like, we gotta sort of blow up some of the stereotypes that we have around these specific characteristics you have. Because often what we hear is, I'm not a leader, I just. Or like, I'm not a leader, I'm an introvert. Because we have all of these sort of like, and we don't know it, not a lot of us are like walking around realizing we have some of this subtext related to leadership, but it's a super common word, and it originates from, military. So there's this way in which we make assumptions about or link certain characteristics. Like we'll look at someone and we'll be like, oh, there's the leader. But what are we noticing? What are we saying that we're seeing that's telling us they're a leader? They could be leading at that moment, but there could also be someone who we're not noticing who is also leading. Because often we link leadership with, being extroverted, being up here with a clicker, speaking, being bold, being someone with great business acumen, right? I mentioned earlier, like extrovert, charismatic, all of those things that we can link with this assumption around leadership. And so if you don't fit some of these boxes around what it looks like, then you can just sort of opt out. And I think this is, and I'll close it soon, Greg. I think this is part of why our organizations are suffering. Because we have a lot of people who have an important influence to bring to the table, but aren't fully accessing it and aren't fully bringing it because they don't fit the stereotype. And so we have sort of people stepping off, sort of living on the sidelines, rather than fully participating in the game. Because we don't fit the stereotype. And this is what we want to say, no, 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 because another reason why we love this definition is because what's not in it is title or direct reports. This has nothing to do with position. And then maximizes the efforts of others, right? This ability that we have to think about our influence and how that really, another word, if the word maximizes throws you off, another word to think about is like how it elevates the efforts of others. And then towards a specific goal, again, I love your thought on that too. A specific goal can be like, this is our 10-year plan, and we've got this massive goal, and we're working towards it. That's specific, it's clear. It can also be, sort of a medium goal. Like, I have this agenda that I've set up for this meeting. I'm going into this meeting, and my goal is that I am going to be responsible that we make sure we get what we need to get covered in this meeting and that people know what they're walking away with. Or it could be micro. Like, I'm walking into the office today, and I'm locking eyes with you, and I'm asking you how you are, and I mean it. And I'm doing it on purpose. I'm doing it on purpose. So another way to think about specific goal is also the ability to say, like, on purpose. Are we behaving? Are we bringing this influence that we have, whether we own it or not? It's there. So are we bringing this influence on purpose? So another way of saying this is that a leader is basically anybody who takes responsibility for their influence, for their impact in the world. Can we take responsibility for our influence in the world? And then finally, this is a quote that we love, so you'll see it on all of our stuff. But becoming a leader is synonymous with becoming yourself. It is precisely that simple, and it is also that difficult. It's precisely that simple, and it is also that difficult. Who we are is how we lead. Again, we're not these just neutral beings that make decisions and things happen. Like, who we are, our leadership happens through the vehicle of who we are. That is just fact. We can't divorce those things from each other. So again, can we come back here and realize what we've got? And for anybody in this room who has tried to do some deep personal work, you can probably attest to the fact that it is difficult. It is difficult work, and it's probably the best work you've ever done in your life. And it probably significantly impacted how you were showing up and the impact that you were making on others. Like, this is the act of leadership. So I want to talk about these 3 components that really need to be on the table if we're going to shift the needle on our leadership effectiveness and ability. And these are not rocket science, but this is just these 3 components that really help us move. So awareness, choice, and responsibility. Awareness, choice, and responsibility. Simple, but let's not confuse that with easy. So awareness, first, this first one, let me go back here a minute. We have to start with awareness because literally we can't do anything without awareness. Like one of the things we say all the time is we can't change what we can't see. If we don't know it's there, we can't actually do anything about it. We can't evolve something that's not there. So we have to start with awareness. And the piece is that most of us are sort of operating in this like autopilot state. And this is a great one. This is a great ask here because I feel like it might be common in the room. How many of you have driven home from work, got in your driveway, and were like, I have zero recollection of anything that happened? Yeah, like this is just, you're like, I didn't feel like I, hit anything. I don't know. I stop signs, hoping, right? This happens all the time. It's because our brain is wired for efficiency. It's not always wired for effectiveness. So this is helpful, right? Our brain gets on pattern, and so it just knows how to do what it does. This would be very problematic if we didn't have this. It means every day you got dressed, you'd be like, oh, this is so intense. I have to think about how to get dressed, right? You go on autopilot, and it helps. It's effective until it's not, right? Because then we just move into this, we just do what we do. Life does us, and we just go through the motions. That's probably the best way to talk about autopilot. We're just going through the motions. And here's the other piece. Our unconscious brain is essentially processing 11 million bits of information per second. So our unconscious brain is on fire. Our conscious brain, 40. 40 bits per second. So what is happening at the unconscious level is really what's driving how we're showing up. It's really driving that sort of influence that we're making on other people. And so the awareness piece is the more that we can expand our awareness, the more data, the more we have access to make better choices. And so this next piece, this choice piece, so I want to talk about choice and responsibility. Again, without awareness, we don't fully realize we're on autopilot, and we don't fully realize what kind of choices we have. Leadership is simply moment-to-moment choices. Moment-to-moment choices that we are making. And most of the time, those are on autopilot, right? We're just going through the motions. So to share a little bit about, to illuminate this choice piece, this is what Carl Jung. Can you do a presentation without Carl Jung? I don't think so. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Right, so how do we bring these things into our awareness, give us more access, and create greater choice? So to talk about choice, I want to talk about Viktor Frankl. How many of you know who Viktor Frankl is? Okay, so he was a psychologist, he was a neurologist. He was most famously known for, though, being a Holocaust survivor. And he wrote a lot of books. So he was in a concentration camp for 3 years. In that time, he lost his wife, his parents, and his brother. And then once he was released, he wrote lots of books, and one of his books was Man's Search for Meaning. And this quote comes from that book. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response, and in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And in that space is our ability to choose our response, right? All day long, we're just stimulus, response, right? Going through the motions, and there's no space. And so this opportunity is, can we see that there is actually a space? Can we see that there's a space that we can have an opportunity to make a choice? Make a conscious choice where potentially, historically, it was an unconscious one. Can we expand that opportunity? And then to move into responsibility, so awareness, once we get to choice, we have so much more ability to really curate the meaningful kind of influence we want to be having. And ultimately, we have to take responsibility for it. And I love this quote to illuminate that, because if anybody could say, like, I had no choice, like it's someone who had completely had all of their agency taken away by being held in a concentration camp. But he still says, like, and yet, I still had a choice. Between stimulus and response, I still had a choice, and it was my response to what was happening to me. So as leaders, we're always left with something that we can always control, which is our response. And that response is something that deeply impacts those around us. It's that social influence piece. So we got to have awareness. That then increases our ability to choose, and we got to take responsibility for how we're showing up. So these are these three components that when these are at work, we will be shifting and evolving who we are, which will shift and evolve the kind of impact that we're able to make on other humans. So now is a time for our tool. And here it is. It's a tough one, guys. This is our tool. You will find this. I've got some resources up here on your table. There's the line, and we call this the line. This is the tool. This is really how complex we get in our organization. We don't do spreadsheets. We do lines. So this line, often with groups, we'll have them guess, like, what do you think this means? And it is amazing to hear the different guesses. I'm not going to do that today because we don't have time. But essentially, we take this line and we pair it with a question. And that question is this: am I above the line or am I below the line? Am I above the line or am I below the line? So what we're doing here is we are creating a dichotomy. And you'll notice that this is about locating where you are. The question is, where am I? So what does it mean? What does it mean to be above the line versus below the line? So the best way to describe it is sort of the difference between what we were talking around, this awareness piece. We're conscious, we're engaged, we're present, we're having that space where we get to choose. We're on purpose. And this autopilot piece is where we're just going through the motions and we're living more on our default modes, on our patterns. So think above the line, like best version of myself, below the line, like least best version of myself. Okay? So here are some things that describe what it's like to be above or below. This is not all inclusive. So some things it might look like if we're living above the line: we're open, we're curious, we're committed to learning. Below the line, we're defensive, we're closed off, we're committed to being right, not getting it right. One for me that lives above the line is just like self-critique. Just like I just get in this like self-critique cycle. Another thing that might live below the line is blaming, shirking responsibility, being passive, people-pleasing, checking out. Above the line, seeking to understand, gracious interpretation, radical responsibility, taking radical responsibility. Other things that live above the line, asking for help, apologizing. I have had to do a ton of that already this week, and it's only Tuesday, you guys. Saying I'm sorry. Saying I'm sorry. I got that wrong. How can we clean this up? How can I help? Right? So we have these two realities at play. And here's what I want to point out, is that this isn't like, the thing that I really want to point out is that the goal is not to live above the line. You will never live above the line all the time. That is a fool's errand. You will just find yourself feeling guilty. The goal is, can you find where you are, right? This is a locating tool. This is an awareness tool. This is a tool that, like, where am I in this moment? Like, oh my gosh, I feel myself, like, checking out. Where am I? Am I above the line or am I below the line? That's the win. The win is seeing it. The win is the awareness. And then often that's enough. Often that's the thing that allows us to shift and really be able to move into the kind of leader and make the kind of choices that we want to be able to make. And so this is about locating. Another distinction. This is not like happy face, rainbows and butterflies live above the line, sad face, like bad news bears below the line. Like, there are things that can be very unpleasant that live above the line. Being candid, having tough conversations, apologizing, that was not easy. Right? There are things that live above the line that don't feel happy all the time. Having, like a conversation with someone because there was something that was gotten wrong, like not easy. In fact, most of us want to skirt that conversation, which would then be below the line, which might feel better in the moment, right? So another thing is that people will be like, oh, I know what lives above the line, positivity. That might be. So yeah, for sure, positivity can live above the line if we are using it as optimism and a way to like offer hope, but it can also live below the line if we're using it as a way to escape and minimize things that are happening, right? So again, it's how are these things being used? So I want to move it from theory land, and this is a big topic that I'm covering very fast. So if you want more information, we've got a lot of information we can give you on this model. This is not our model. But I want you to take a beat at your tables, and on this card, I want you to just think about for yourself, what do you look like when you are living above the line? What do you look like when you're living above the line? And then what do you look like when you're living below the line? Okay, so just a beat. One way to get at what you look like when you live below the line is think about like, what your spouse or partner or friend might say when you are at your least best. So just a minute to think about yourself in this space. All right. I'm aware that we need to be transitioning here. So I've got one thing to close, but your homework from this is to keep thinking on this. But then also, as you think about what am I like above the line, like highlight the thing that you want to turn the volume up on. Take a minute to look at what you wrote and like what's the thing that you want to turn the volume up on and keep doing more of. And then I want you to look at the thing below, what's happening below the line for you, and what's something that you can, from below the line, just bring a little bit more consciousness to. So those two pieces, what can you turn the volume up, and what can you bring a little bit more consciousness to? To conclude, and I'm going to try and do this fast so that we can get to where we want to get to, but it requires a personal story. So my dad passed away in April. He was a pastor, and he was also a gentleman that could captivate a room. And so I think for these reasons, he was invited to speak at my high school baccalaureate ceremony. And as a high schooler, I had lots of feels about that, but he did it anyways. And I'm glad that he did. And his whole sermon was on For Such a Time as This. And for those of you that don't know this particular story, it comes from the story of Esther. So Esther was a Jew who disguised her identity to ultimately become Queen of Persia. And she became Queen of Persia at a time that was a very precarious time because she found out that the king actually was plotting to kill off all the Jews. So she was present at a very critical time. And as part of the story goes, she is told by someone, Esther, you are where you are for such a time as this. You are who you are for such a time as this. And so my dad's whole sermon was around these critical moments that we find ourselves in life and how we're really going to take responsibility for showing up to them. And if my dad were here today, I would say, yes, and. Yes, Dad, and actually, our life isn't lived in those critical moments. Our life is lived in these micro moments. Our life is lived right now in these moment-to-moment choices. The only place that our leadership gets expressed is right now, in these micro moments. And so what you all do now isn't just something. It's actually everything. And in fact, it's for such a time as this. Thank you.
Abby, thank you. I don't know about you, one of the practices that I have is to do a clarity break. And I have tremendous notes to go back and ponder on as a part of my clarity break on how I show up and for such a time as this. Thank you, Abby, for the wisdom that you shared with us today. Thank you as well to the Holland BPW and to Smith, Hoy, Rice, and Rogie. I said it right. Smith, Hoy, then I got cocky. Smith, Hoy, Rice, and Rogie for their sponsorship of today's event. We will be back here again on March 18, and we will be joined by Scott Rumpsa next month, the Executive Director for Community Action House. One thing that I want to bring to your attention is Community Impact Day, my very favorite day of the year. Hannah's celebrating in the back of the room. We will have Community Impact Day again this year, and I hope that you have this date marked in your calendar and that you will come be a part of it. Our goal is to have 2,025 volunteers out serving in 2025, and we can't do that without your help. One cool thing that we've done this year is introduced this statewide, and so we have between 8 and 10 other chambers of commerce joining us on this day, doing Community Impact Day at the same time in their community as well. So be a part of turning ripples of influence into tidal waves of impact in our community and beyond. So with that, thank you for joining us today. Go make it a remarkable day. Thanks, everybody.